We all wonder why we were born into this life, why this family, this body, these burdens we carry like old stones tucked beneath our ribs. But what if the answer isn't found in your memories, but in the silence before your first breath? Because long before you arrived, something sacred was written, not on paper, but in light, not by hand, but by soul. And if you knew where to look, you might remember the reason you came. There is a moment older than time, a moment not measured in years or suns or seasons, but in stillness, in that ancient silence, before atoms had formed and before names had meaning. There was only presence, and within that presence, a single question stirred. It was not spoken. It had no language, but its gravity was so strong, it rippled across the unseen world like a whisper that became a storm. Shall I go? This was not a question of escape. It was a longing, a desire to know, to feel, to return. You see, before you were you. Before there were birthdays and mistakes and echoes of grief, there was only essence, a field of pure awareness. Still, watching, waiting. And then the veil moved, not because something outside forced it to, but because something within you said yes. Yes to forgetting. Yes to pain. Yes to the slow bloom of becoming. You may wonder why any soul would choose this. Why choose heartbreak? Why choose limitation? Why choose a world where loss is guaranteed and love is never promised? But the ancient teachings hidden in scrolls, whispered through lineage, and encoded in symbols older than language tell us this. The soul does not come here to escape suffering. It comes here to transform it, because only in the heaviness of form can light remember how to rise. Only in the shadow can we discover what we are not, and by contrast, what we truly are. There is an old manuscript, lost to most, but spoken of in myth, a cosmic record, a pre-incarnate scroll. Some call it the Akashic Script, others the soul's covenant. It is not bound in leather or ink, it is bound in vibration. Within it, every soul writes its own passage, what it will learn, who it will meet, what it will forget, and what it must one day remember. You didn't fall into this life by accident. You descended like a spark through the layers of reality, guided not by fate, but by choice. Not choice in the way the mind understands, but a deeper knowing, a sacred geometry of intent. So as we journey now into the chambers of that unseen library, the one that exists behind the veil, you may find echoes, fragments, signs that your soul has been whispering this whole time. Let us begin. Before form, there was formlessness. Before sound, there was silence. And in that silence, so ancient it predates memory, your soul began to stir. Not as a thought, not as a body awaiting birth, but as a flicker of pure awareness. Timeless, weightless, infinite. You were not alone in that place. All souls radiant, interconnected, drifted together like stars in a vast unseen ocean. There, no one had names, no one had stories, only essence, only frequency, only light learning how to listen. This primordial realm has been called many names: the void, the source field, the eternal womb. In Kabbalistic mysticism, it is Ein Sof, the infinite that existed before all creation. In Vedic cosmology, it is Brahman, the undivided field of reality. Here, your soul floated like a question wrapped in light. Not a question of doubt, but of direction, of when, where, and why. In this stillness, time did not flow. It waited, because time, as we know it, is born of motion, and motion had not yet begun. There was only potential, And in that potential, your soul, like all others, faced a sacred threshold, a place of preparation, a place of contemplation, what the ancient mystery schools called the Hall of Choosing. It is not a hall in the architectural sense, no columns, no ceilings, but a sacred space in consciousness, a liminal zone between the eternal and the temporal. There, your soul reviewed more than just past and future. It reviewed meaning, not in terms of gain or loss, but through the lens of growth. You may imagine this place is quiet, but it thrums with the resonance of unborn lives, each life like a string on an infinite harp, waiting to be plucked by intent. And then comes the sacred pause, because the soul, your soul, does not choose lightly. It studies the patterns. It listens to the echo of karma, the rhythm of energy, the call of purpose. You do not choose your life the way one chooses clothes or a meal. You choose it like a sculptor chooses stone, not for ease, but for what it can become. Perhaps that is why the most advanced souls often choose the heaviest lives, not to suffer, but to awaken, not to be broken, but to remember how to bend light through the cracks. The manuscript, if it were to be called, that is not written with ink. It is written with intention. It does not record what will happen. It records what the soul longs to learn. Some souls choose to love again where love was once betrayed. Some choose to return to those they have harmed, as healer or child. Some come to face the darkness they once ran from, because on the other side of that shadow is the key to their expansion. This is the mystery many forget, that you are not the victim of this life. You are its architect. You may not remember making the blueprint, but you feel its edges in every yearning, in every recurring wound, in the uncanny sense that this means something, even if you don't yet know what. We are told that our souls are blank when we're born, empty, innocent, fragile. But the ancient ones, the mystics, the dreamwalkers, the elders of forgotten lineages, they knew better. They knew that a baby does not arrive empty, but full of memory, of mission, of sacred promise. So why do we forget? Why do we come through the womb cloaked in amnesia? Because forgetting is part of the plan. To remember the sacred is to find it anew. To forget who you are is to earn the joy of rediscovering your light. And so the soul, in the place before the place, takes one last look at what it was, at what it longs to become. Then it whispers a silent vow, "I will go," and the veil begins to open. Somewhere beyond the reach of language, beyond thought, and beyond death, there exists a realm not ruled by gravity, but by agreement. Not legal contracts, not inked decrees, but sacred covenants written in the radiance of soul to soul. This is the place the ancients called the Between. The Tibetan mystics named it Bardo. The Greek philosophers saw echoes of it in Lethe, the river of forgetting. But deeper still beneath the symbols and names lies the truth of the light realms. Here, your soul met others, not strangers, not new beings, but old companions, the ones who have walked beside you in lifetimes long erased from memory. We often imagine the soul as a solitary traveler, but the deeper mystery is this: we are never sent alone. We come in soul clusters. Some call them soul families, others twin flames, karmic partners, spiritual mirrors. But the essence is this: before you descended into matter, you made a pact not just with yourself, but with the others who would shape your becoming, the mother who would wound you, so you could learn forgiveness, the friend who would abandon you, so you could find your own anchor, the child who would awaken your heart, in a way no book or temple ever could. These are not accidents. They are alignments, threads of destiny woven in the light. The manuscript, the one etched not in parchment, but in frequency, contains these agreements, not as fixed events, but as sacred possibilities. It is like a constellation. You choose the stars, but how you connect them, that becomes the map of your life. Many spiritual traditions hint at this. The Zohar speaks of the soul descending through celestial gates, guided by the Malachim, the angelic beings of light. In Islamic mysticism, there is the concept of Alam al-Arwah, the realm where all souls existed before birth. And in modern metaphysical thought, this realm is where souls sit in council, a gathering not of judges, but of witnesses, elder spirits who help clarify the soul's path. They ask not, "What do you want?" but "What will help you remember who you are?" And so the questions deepen. Do you wish to taste betrayal, so you may later know the richness of trust? Will you carry the weight of illness to understand the sanctity of the body? Will you walk through poverty, so you might awaken the abundance that lives within? These questions are not punishments. They are invitations, and your soul in its wisdom answers not with fear but with fire. It says, "Yes, I will go. I will forget. And in forgetting, I will awaken anew." There is a reason so many of the world's mystical traditions speak of a fall before a return. The descent of the soul is not a punishment. It is a pilgrimage. From the higher realms, Earth looks like a school, a place of contrast, density, beauty, pain, all necessary for growth. And the soul knows that growth is not found in perfection, but in experience. That is why the covenant is made not in the language of control, but in the music of trust. Even the souls who promise to hurt us in this life, they are in the light realms, beloveds. Yes, even the villain in your story may be the one who agreed to play that role, so you could rise beyond it. What an unfathomable love that must take. What a sacred grief. But this is the soul's way, to move through the fire, not because it enjoys burning, but because only through fire can gold remember what it is. And so, with the manuscript complete, the soul bows. To the others, to itself, to the journey that awaits. The light dims, the veil thickens, and the soul begins its descent. But deep within its essence, it carries the memory of that covenant, a memory that may one day surface in dreams, in déjà vu, in the quiet moments between heartbreak and healing. A whisper that says, "This is not random, this is remembered." Imagine, for a moment, that just beyond the edge of waking thought, there exists a library not made of stone or silence, but of vibration. Its halls stretch beyond comprehension, not in space, but in dimension, and upon its shelves, not books, but imprints, records of all that has been felt, chosen, lived, and longed for by every soul that ever was. This is the place mystics have called the Hall of Records, the Akasha, the celestial archive. Ancient Indian sages spoke of the Akashic field, the etheric substrate that holds the memory of all consciousness. Theosophists and clairvoyants across centuries claimed to access its frequencies in deep trance. Even modern quantum mystics hint that information, once created, is never destroyed but stored in the fabric of reality itself. And it is here, in this living library between lifetimes, that your soul once stood, not as an observer but as a reader of its own becoming. You may wonder what is contained there. What kind of book could possibly record a soul? But this is no ordinary book. It does not use letters, it uses light. Each soul's record is a unique vibrational field, a holographic echo of every intention, lesson, and emotion from every incarnation across time. To open your record is to feel your entire journey as if you were standing in the center of your own star. And yet, before birth, your soul does just this. With guides, beings of luminous wisdom beside you, you enter the field, not to be judged, but to understand. Here, the soul reviews what has been learned and what remains hidden in shadow, what patterns continue to repeat, and what wounds cry out for transformation. You may picture this like a film, but it is more alive than that. It is a direct knowing, You do not just see the sorrow you once caused, you feel it from the other's perspective. Not to shame you, but to awaken you to deeper empathy. This is the sacred weight of the interlife. Not punishment, but resonance. The records reveal not just what was done, but why what fear drove the action, what love tried to be remembered. It is said that the soul weeps here, not tears of regret, but tears of recognition. The kind of tears you cry when you realize you could have chosen peace, but chose protection instead. And in that moment, the soul begins to choose again. From the library of possibilities, you begin to write your next path, not in isolation, but in alignment with the universal tapestry. You select the lessons most essential to your evolution. Perhaps this time, you will learn how to speak your truth. Perhaps this time, you will face the same loss but with more grace. Perhaps this time, you will meet the same soul but love them without fear. It is here amidst the records that the soul's intention becomes the seed of a new life. But the soul does not design alone. There are others, guides, ancestors, beings of wisdom who help you calibrate. They remind you of your essence when the weight of choice begins to dim your light. And when the design is nearly complete, there is a stillness, a final pause. The soul knows what it will forget. It knows that once born, the plan will blur, and only breadcrumbs will remain. Intuition, dreams, synchronicities, a sudden ache when you hear a certain song, or the sense that you've lived this moment before. These are not coincidences. They are reminders, echoes from the library, where you once stood as the author of your own becoming. And when all is ready, the manuscript closes, not as a finality, but as a promise, a sacred contract written not in certainty, but in trust. And so, with memory tucked into silence, the soul prepares for descent. The womb awaits. The veil descends. But the story, your story, has already begun. Before the first cry, before the lungs take in air, there is the womb, a sacred chamber where soul and flesh begin their dance. Science sees a biological miracle, cells dividing, tissues forming, organs synchronizing to ancient rhythms. But mystics have long seen something more, a sacred threshold, a liminal space between worlds, a place where echoes from the soul's covenant still whisper if only we could listen. In the esoteric traditions of many ancient cultures, the womb is not just a vessel, it is a temple, a portal, the halfway point between the light and the material, and within it, your soul begins to remember the forgetting. As the brain forms, so too does the veil, not all at once, but in layers, a slow dimming of divine memory. Why? Because to truly be here, to feel, to stumble, to grow, the soul must immerse fully. And immersion requires forgetting. The journey through the womb is not passive. It is an initiation. There is an ancient belief echoed in Tibetan Buddhism that at the moment of conception, a light appears to the descending soul. Drawn by karmic resonance, the soul enters the embryonic form, beginning its new earthly chapter. But the soul does not merge instantly. It hovers. It weaves in and out, like a tide. Some mystics describe the soul as observing, watching its tiny body take shape, feeling the pulse of the mother's emotions, the vibrations of the father's voice, the resonance of the ancestral line it is entering. This is more than poetic metaphor. Modern research into fetal consciousness has shown that by the third trimester, a baby responds to sound, tone, even emotional energy. What if the soul is already listening? What if those lullabies and arguments, those whispers and silences, become the first brushstrokes on the canvas of becoming? In indigenous traditions across the world, it is believed that the child hears their name before birth, not just the one given by parents, but the true name, the soul's note in the cosmic choir. And it is in the womb that the soul begins to attune to the life it chose. to the lessons it agreed to learn, to the karma it accepted to transmute, to the love it longs to remember. Even the shape of the body, the DNA inherited, the subtle imprints of generational trauma, these are not mistakes. They are ingredients in the alchemy of awakening. You may have chosen that very body because of what it would teach you about limitation, beauty, sensitivity, endurance. You may have chosen your parents not because they were ideal, but because they were perfect mirrors for the soul's forgotten longing. And in those quiet months, as the heart forms and the spine curls, the soul begins to integrate. Not fully, not yet, but it starts to fold itself into form a divine intelligence, learning to dwell in skin and blood. The mystical text, Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, speaks of how spirit moves into structure, how letters, numbers, and vibrations combine to give birth to the world. Your body, even before it left the womb, was being written by the intention you once made in the Library of Light. Then comes the moment. The contractions begin. The veil thickens one final time, and as your soul plunges fully into matter, into breath, into flesh, into forgetting, the echoes begin to fade. But not entirely, because there are those flashes, childhood moments where you remembered something no one taught you. Dreams you had before you had language. Fears and fascinations that never made sense yet felt ancient. These are the soul's breadcrumbs, the silent reminder that you chose this, not as punishment, but as purpose. The womb was not just the start of your life. It was the echo chamber of your soul's covenant, a sacred bridge between the stars you came from and the story you are about to live. There is a sacred paradox woven into the soul's descent, that we are eternal, yet we come here to be limited. That we are infinite, yet we enter a world of edges, endings, and entropy. Why would a being of light step willingly into shadow? The ancient mystery schools held an answer. Earth is not a prison. It is a school, and not a school of facts or formulas, but of soul forging, a realm designed for transformation through contrast. In the upper realms, love is effortless, light, omnipresent. There is no friction, no doubt, no hunger to remind us what fullness feels like. But here in this dense plane of matter and memory, every emotion is magnified, every choice consequential, every moment alive with potential. Here, we learn by forgetting so that we might remember through experience. And this remembering, this slow, aching uncovering of what we already are, is the curriculum of the soul. The pain you feel, the heartbreak, the loneliness, the illness, the betrayal, these are not punishments from a cruel cosmos. They are initiations, each wound a doorway, each struggle a mirror, each loss a riddle that leads deeper inward. This is the truth hidden in plain sight. Growth rarely comes in comfort. It arrives in crisis. Just as the caterpillar must dissolve into formless goo before becoming a butterfly, the soul must sometimes lose all it clings to become what it has always been. The Sufis say, "Break your heart until it opens." And so earth breaks us not to destroy us, but to crack the shell of ego so that soul might shine through. If you look at your life through the eyes of the body, you may see chaos, unfairness, random suffering. But if you tilt your perspective just a few degrees wider through the lens of the pre-birth covenant, you may begin to see a different pattern. The illness that forced you to slow down. Perhaps it brought you to stillness, to presence, to a reconnection with your breath, the abandonment that hollowed your chest. Perhaps it taught you how to stand without needing to be held, the grief that pulled the light from your eyes. Perhaps it opened a gate to a love that transcends death. These are not just poetic sentiments. They are spiritual technologies. The soul does not seek comfort. It seeks clarity. It chooses lives that will stretch it, break it open, burn away illusion. And Earth, this strange, beautiful, terrible Earth, is perfectly designed for that. It is the forge, where spirit meets form, where love meets loss, where the divine forgets itself long enough to choose itself again. Even our limitations, our bodies, our minds, our linear time are part of the training. The veil of forgetting is not a flaw. It is the most sacred feature. Because what the soul learns here, it cannot learn in the light. It learns patience, because time moves slowly. It learns forgiveness, because hurt is real. It learns compassion, because here, pain has a face and a voice. And so the earth becomes the most sacred classroom in the cosmos, a realm where angels put on skin, where gods grow tired and human, where the infinite becomes small enough to hold a child's hand and in doing so, remembers its vastness. And when the soul is weary, when the weight of the world feels too great, there are always signs. A line in a poem, a stranger's kindness, a dream that feels like home. These are your reminders. Not that you are failing, but that you are learning. And the final lesson, that you are never separate, only asleep. That suffering is not the opposite of light. It is the soil in which light is grown. And one day, perhaps not today, you will look back on your life not with regret, but with reverence. For you will see that everything was the answer to a question your soul once asked in the library between the stars. There comes a moment in every soul's journey on earth, quiet, unexpected, when the veil thins, not torn away in thunder or lightning, but gently, like fog dissolving in morning light. You may be walking through the woods, or washing dishes, or weeping at 2 a.m. for reasons you can't explain, and suddenly you remember something. Not a memory from childhood, not a face or a date, but a feeling. A sense that you've been here before. That this struggle, this choice, this crossroads was always meant to be. This is not déjà vu. It is recognition. It is the soul whispering through the cracks in the mind's armor. You chose this, not as punishment, not to suffer, but to learn, to remember, to become. The forgotten decision is not an intellectual recall. It does not arrive with certainty. It arrives with resonance. You feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the tears that rise without reason when a piece of music touches something ancient in you. You remember through art, through beauty, through grief, and through synchronicity, those moments when time folds in on itself, when the right book falls off the shelf, when a stranger says the very words you needed, when you dream of a place you've never been and wake with a longing too deep to describe. These are breadcrumbs laid by your soul in cooperation with the unseen, signs that you are on the path your soul once traced in light. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the slow integration of the self with the soul. Others call it awakening. Some remembrance. But names do not matter. What matters is the moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to ask, "What is this revealing within me?" For this is the fulcrum, the shift from victim to visionary, from lost wanderer to conscious traveler. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers. You remember in dreams. You remember through love. You remember through loss. You remember when you meet someone and feel the unmistakable pull of a soul you knew before breath. And with every remembrance, the veil thins further. Your fears begin to lose their grip. Your questions become quieter, more reverent. Not because you know all the answers, but because you start to trust the questions. You begin to see that the soul doesn't just choose the peaks, it chooses the valleys. Because in the depths, where light seems absent, you learn to generate it. And what could be more divine than a being that creates light from within the dark? In Gnostic tradition, the soul is seen as a spark trapped in matter, seeking to return to the pleroma, the fullness of divine being. But the true teaching hidden beneath that myth is not escape, it is integration. The light does not abandon the world, it learns to radiate from within it. So too with you. You are not here to escape your body, your story, your wounds. You are here to infuse them with meaning, to sanctify the very soil you once cursed. And in doing so, you begin to rewrite the manuscript not with new events, but with new eyes. For what was once suffering becomes sacrifice. What was once brokenness becomes initiation. What was once random becomes sacred. And so you walk this world not as one who is lost, but as one who is remembering, step by step, tear by tear, light through flesh, and perhaps, in time, you will find yourself in the same stillness you once stood in before birth. Not outside of time, but within it. Not separate from life, but finally present within it. And there, you will hear it again, the ancient echo that began it all. I chose this. There is a secret the mystics have always known. That behind every sorrow, every joy, every fleeting moment of this earthly life, there is a mirror, and in that mirror is not your reflection, but your remembrance. We come into this world through the veil. It softens the light, blurs the memory, distorts the truth not to deceive but to prepare. Because without the veil, the intensity of remembrance would blind us. And so, we forget not as a failure, but as the first step of the sacred spiral. But the veil is not perfect. It shimmers. It tears slightly in dreams, in loss, in awe. And when it parts, even just a little, we catch glimpses of the flame, the inner fire, the ancient ember we brought with us from the stars, that knowing beyond logic, that unshakable isness that whispers, even in despair, you are more than this moment. Many search for the flame in religion, in lovers, in success, but it cannot be found in things, only revealed in silence, in surrender, in stillness so deep it feels like death, but births a new life. The mirror reflects this truth, not as appearance, but as essence. Every encounter becomes a reflection, every wound a map. The person who triggers you, they are showing you where you've hidden the parts of yourself, still afraid to be seen. The path you resisted reveals the direction your soul most longs to grow. In Gnostic and Hermetic teachings, the mirror is called the gate of return, where spirit recognizes itself through form. And once the soul sees itself in the mirror, truly sees, the flame ignites, no longer as a flicker, but as a roaring remembrance. You begin to walk not with fear, but with fire, not with answers, but with presence, not with control, but with clarity. You may still grieve, you may still ache, but now you know that even the pain is a sacred teacher, an echo of a choice made beyond time, for the purpose of awakening within it. This is the final mystery of the manuscript, that it was never meant to be read, but lived. You came here to embody it, to breathe it, to lose yourself in it so that you might find yourself through it. The veil never fully disappears, but it becomes translucent. You begin to see the symbols within the chaos, the music in the silence, the flame behind the mask. And when others look into your eyes, they may begin to remember too, because remembrance is contagious. It spreads not through teaching, but through being. You don't need to speak the language of the soul. You are the language. Every gesture, every kindness, every time you choose presence over reaction, forgiveness over fear, stillness over striving. These are the syllables of the light you once carried into the hall of choosing. You are the sacred text, and one day perhaps when this life ends, or perhaps in a moment of total stillness, you will stand once again in the library between lifetimes. And you will smile, because you will see that even the messiest chapters were perfect, that the forgetting was necessary, that the veil was your teacher, that the mirror showed you who you were, and that the flame, the divine ember you carried all along, was never lost. It simply waited for you to remember. Perhaps the veil was never closed. We simply forgot we were light.